You know, the Bible has some truly strange visions, but this one might take the cake. An angel hands the Apostle John a little book and says, "Here, eat this." Seriously? So in this explainer, we're going to dig into why this heavenly snack was somehow sweet as honey, but also incredibly bitter.
So there it is, right from the source, the book of Revelation. John literally eats this book. And it's this total paradox, right? First, it's amazing, sweet as honey. But then, just moments later, it turns his stomach bitter. It's this moment of pure divine joy, followed by something deeply, profoundly unsettling.
So that's the big question, isn't it? What is this book? And why would something from heaven have this Jekyll and Hyde effect? Well, this explainer is based on a sermon by Pastor Elvis for Church, and it offers a pretty fascinating interpretation. It connects this vision all the way back to ancient curses and a final judgment. To find the answer, we actually have to go way, way back.
All right, so let's get into it. What's the deal with this sweet and bitter book? To really get a handle on that bitter aftertaste, we first have to look at how the book itself is described in Revelation chapter 10.
Okay, so picture this. John sees this massive angel, so big that one foot is on the sea and the other is on the land. And in its hand is this small opened book. That opened part is important. He's told to eat it, and we know what happens next. Sweet, then bitter. Now, according to the interpretation we're looking at, the only way to solve this New Testament mystery is to find the key hidden deep in the Old Testament.
And this is where it gets really fascinating. The sermon points to a direct parallel, a kind of blueprint for this whole experience, in a really ancient ritual from the book of Numbers.
It was called the trial of bitter water. It was basically a ritual to determine if a wife accused of adultery was guilty when there was no other proof. And here's the light bulb moment, the first huge clue. It involved consuming the contents of a book to bring about a divine judgment. Sound familiar?
So think about how this worked. A priest would literally write curses onto a scroll, wash the ink off into some water, and the woman would drink it. The words themselves, the curses, became the very instrument of truth. That's a powerful idea, and it's absolutely crucial for understanding what might be inside that little book in Revelation.
Okay, so let's follow this train of thought. If Revelation's little book is actually a book of curses, then what kind of curses are we talking about? What sins would trigger them? Well, for that answer, the interpretation takes us to another book, Deuteronomy.
In Deuteronomy, especially chapters 27 and 28, you find this whole list of actions that are said to bring a curse down on someone. We're talking about the big ones, the foundational stuff. Sins against God and family. Things like worshiping idols, disrespecting your parents, or engaging in sexual immorality. And for every single one of these curses, the entire community had to respond, together, with one single, powerful word.
That word was amen, which basically means so be it, or we agree. They weren't just passively listening. They were actively affirming the judgment. They were saying, yes, this is right, this is just.
But it didn't stop there. The list also included curses for sins against society. Things like cheating your neighbor out of land, taking advantage of the blind, corrupting the justice system, or even taking a bribe to kill someone. And according to this interpretation, you have to see this as more than just an old list of laws. It's like a cosmic catalog of wrongdoing, a record of sins whose consequences are just waiting.
And yep, you guessed it, for every single one of those, the people would again say amen, affirming that the curse was just.
All right, so let's tie this all back together. How does this ancient list of curses connect to that sweet and bitter book John had to eat? Well, the sermon's argument is simple and powerful. Those ancient curses, that's what's inside the book.
So here's the absolute core of the argument. The old book of curses from Deuteronomy was the written record of sins and their consequences, but the small book in Revelation, that's the execution of those curses. It's like the final bill for all the unpunished sin throughout all of history is finally coming due.
And right there, that's the proposed answer to our whole sweet and bitter mystery. For the prophet John, getting to see and understand God's ultimate plan, that's an incredibly sweet, amazing privilege. But the contents of that plan, the awful, terrible, bitter reality of what that judgment actually means for the world, well, that's almost impossible to stomach.
So, if this little book really does contain the final judgment, what's the big takeaway? What's the ultimate warning? Well, the sermon frames it as a really profound warning. The idea is that people might commit these sins today and think, hey, nothing bad happened.
They get away with it. But a day of reckoning has been recorded. The bill is just waiting. And that future event, when the bill finally comes due, is what the Bible often calls God's wrath.
So, to wrap it all up, this interpretation really transforms the book. It's not just a weird, symbolic vision anymore. It becomes the actual mechanism of final judgment. The book is opened, and that's the signal that the time has come to unleash all those ancient recorded curses on the world. The sweetness is knowing God's plan. The bitterness is the judgment itself. And it all serves as a call to be saved from what's coming.
And all of this leaves us with a pretty heavy final thought. If this interpretation holds water, if these ancient curses really are a prophecy of a future judgment, what does a warning that was written down thousands of years ago actually mean for us, for the world, right here, right now?